All right. All right. Hi, everyone.
Morning.
Hello.
Let's excuse me. Let's wait for a few more of our participants to show up, and then we'll get going. So I don't know that we'll finish this chapter today. I hope we do. But if not, that's no big deal, because last time there was a lot of really interesting discussion when we talked about Mary, the color scientist. And of course, as I let you know last time, today we'll be talking about zombies. And then after zombies, we're going to talk about how we might tackle the hard problems. So I'd like to finish that today, but if we don't, because lots of cool discussion happens, well, that's just fine. So let's go ahead and start sharing the screen. Such a lovely day outside, not a cloud in the sky. I may have to go outside. That would be nice. What's yeah, I'm tired of the cold. I'll tell you that. It's too cold. We had it so easy for the first bit of winter this year. And then we got like all of the cold and all of the snow. So, well, hopefully it'll be a little bit warmer by the time we return to in-person classes, which, as I said previously, if, barring any other craziness, the university has stated that in-person classes will resume on the week of February 7th. Yeah, no snow where you are, eh, Ayman? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Donovan, go ahead.
Well, I'm still out of town, but where I am, the weather is just like crazy. Like this morning, it's -6 out, which is cold but not insane. But like two days ago, it was warm enough for my dad to go golfing in shorts. So
that's so weird. Wow. Oh man.
that's not the craziest thing, because I'm in the States right now, specifically the state of Kansas, and it's right in that perfect spot where you get cold air from the north and warm air from the south. So it just all winter long, it can't decide what it wants to do. But I remember last year that like winter storm that like hit like the Gulf Coast here. It resulted in a bizarre 2-week period where one weekend it was like, I want to say like 20+ degrees Celsius. The next weekend it was inching close to that that magical number where I don't need to do a Fahrenheit conversion. And then the next weekend it was back to being 20+ degrees Celsius.
Wow. That's different. I mean, oh geez, I don't think I've been that far south. It's hard to imagine a world with a weird winter like that. But I mean, I don't know. I guess geez, if well, knock on wood, but that's the kind of winter we may start to see with climate change and whatnot up here, which I'd rather just go to Kansas and see it. But yeah, the week of February 7th will be back. There will be options, like I said before, there will be options for people who still want to join the class remotely. So don't worry about that. Either Zoom or Discord. I haven't quite decided yet. I used Discord last semester for remote students. I might continue using Zoom just to see if it works any better. I mean, really, the utility of either of those programs is kind of dependent on my laptop, which is not really that great of a computer, but we'll do the best we can. So last time we talked about Mary's room. That's the thought experiment that's due to Frank Jackson, where we have Mary, who is the color scientist, and she is like the complete color scientist. She knows everything about optics, the physics of light and stuff. She knows everything there is to know about the color processing in the brain, absolutely everything. But she's kind of raised in this black and white room, and she never sees color, even though she knows everything about color. And the idea of the experiment, if you recall, is to sort of test your intuitions about what will happen when Mary leaves the room and sees a colored object for the first time. She might be surprised if she sees something red and says, "Oh, I didn't know red would look like that." And if that's what Mary says, if that's your intuition, then you probably believe that Mary, when she was in the room, did not know everything there was to know about color, right? If that's your intuition, then you may believe that physicalism, all the physical facts of the matter, optics, physics, color, processing in the brain, so forth, are not all there is to it. And that's the knowledge argument against physicalism, right? Physical knowledge is not the only kind of knowledge that there is. It's not the only knowledge we need to consider in explaining color perception. So physicalism is wrong. So you might be a dualist, or maybe an idealist. I don't know. If you don't think that Mary is surprised when she leaves the room, then you've allowed Mary to truly know everything about color. So if you do like Dennett's experiment, imagine that somebody hands Mary a blue banana, says, "Here you go, here's a yellow banana, Mary, check it out." Mary wouldn't be fooled. She'd be like, "What? This is a blue banana. What trickery is this?" And if you believe that, you're probably a physicalist. All there are physical things. The only, it's not really the word we use nowadays, but the only substance is physical stuff, matter, energy, so forth, right? So that's how that's meant to delineate your intuitions. But now we have a similar exercise, philosophical zombies. And I believe we left off right here, where I imagined you to, or I asked you to think about this scenario where you imagine a creature that's identical to you, down to the molecules, down to the atoms even, but it has no conscious experience. So a zombie Josh, has no qualia, has no subjective consciousness. As David Chalmers says, all is dark inside, right? And this argument about zombies is due to Chalmers, by the way. This is kind of one of his things. So there's nothing that it's like to be a philosophical zombie. Now, the trick to this thought experiment, when you think through it, is to try and see if you can conceive of it, or whether it does not make sense to you. You might be able to conceive of this creature. And this is what philosophers call a conceivability argument. A conceivability argument usually goes something like this. If something is conceivable, like zombies, then zombies are possible. If you can conceive of it, then it's possible that it could exist. And if it's possible that zombies could exist, then it looks like consciousness is a sort of inessential extra, right? And there are some major thinkers that think this, that think that zombies are conceivable. John Searle, for example, thinks we could have two systems, like regular Josh, conscious Josh versus zombie Josh, and they would possess identical behavior, but one would be conscious and one would not be conscious. And that's the key. I mean, we're not just talking about indistinguishability in terms of physical appearance or physical makeup. So zombie Josh looks just like me. If you did a little, if you did like some kind of sample, like take a skin sample and analyzed it with your sciencey tools, you would discover that it's physically indistinguishable from conscious Josh. But zombie Josh also behaves just like conscious Josh. You know, zombie Josh could show up and teach this class. You could have a conversation. Maybe I'm already zombie Josh, and you're talking to me, asking me questions. Oh man, Josh seems pretty conscious today. But actually I'm a zombie, maybe. So that's what Searle says. Chalmers also finds zombies conceivable. Of course he does. This is his thought experiment, right? He writes, the logical possibility of zombies seems obvious to me. A zombie is just something physically identical to me, but which has no conscious experience. All is dark inside, as I said before. And this idea that, you know, zombies are conceivable, and if they're conceivable, they're possible, is called consciousness inessentialism, because it posits that consciousness is an optional, inessential extra. A physical system identical to me does not necessarily have to have it, right? Right. Oh, you mean zombie Josh? Who's to say zombie Josh is not conscious? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, that's what my question was.
Yeah, that's a good question, because if you were to just assume that I were a zombie or a robot, well, then there's a worry about something called solipsism, right? Oh, no worries, Andrew. Yeah, I saw you reappeared there, Andrew. No problem. So if you know, if you start thinking to yourself like, oh, what if my professor is a zombie or an android or some kind of simulation in the Matrix? You know, maybe I'm a computer program. Maybe this is the Matrix or something, right? Well, then you start bumping into an issue concerning solipsism, right? And solipsism is the belief that your mind and the contents of your mind are the only thing that you can know for sure, right? Like I can know that my mind exists, but I can't know that yours exists. You might be another mind, you might be a zombie, right? Maybe there's an evil genius manipulating me, or maybe I'm like Neo in the Matrix and I'm talking with some computer programs, you know. So that is that's the worry, and it's a worry because solipsism is kind of, depending on who you ask, solipsism is kind of absurd, right? This was a big criticism against Descartes back in the day when Rene Descartes, you know, was doing his meditations, right? Sitting by the fire, looking at beeswax melting and thinking about life and whether he exists and what it's possible to know, right? And you know, he doubts everything, but eventually comes to that epistemic foundation he's looking for, the cogito, right? I think, therefore I am. The one thing he can be certain of is that he exists, even if he's being deceived by God or an evil genius. And critics of him at that time said, whoa, that's solipsism, right? Descartes answers by saying, well, of course I don't really assume that all those people walking down the street in their coats are automatons. No, I don't think that. I judge that they are people, but that's the worry, right? So there's a couple things. Let's get back. So Elijah asks, if you are the exact same as a zombie, then the zombie could develop consciousness, right? Would that be physicalism? Yes, that's what a physicalist would say. Yes, exactly. Yeah, you're right, Elijah. That's exactly right. That's like the opposite of what Searle and Chalmers would say. That's the other end of this argument. And Sarah, that's interesting to hear. I like seeing this kind of thing, actually, because I mean, I'm not on TikTok. I'm too old for TikTok. Let's be real. But I know that there's a lot of silly stuff on TikTok. So it's nice to hear that there's some cool stuff on TikTok about consciousness. That's pretty fun. Maybe I should get on there and teach some consciousness to the kids. What? Your grandpa's on TikTok? That's awesome. I guess maybe I'll just have to, play around with it and, make sure the algorithm's showing me the right stuff, right? Because there's also a lot of nonsense on TikTok too. Yeah. There's my philosophy of the paranormal class, for example, and this is something I only became aware of recently, but on TikTok, there's a lot of discussion of the same kinds of things that we would discuss in my philosophy of the paranormal class. A lot of discussion about things like manifesting, which actually has to do with this kind of fuzzy notion that Blackmore talks about in this book, the power of consciousness. Ooh, we'll get to that later in the course, but yeah, a lot of students encounter this stuff on social media. So yeah, I'll think about it. So let's see. That's consciousness in essentialism. Oh, they're everywhere. Yeah. Well, it's, it sounds good. Pre-TikTok, I mean, I'm showing my age a bit here. Y'all might be a little young to remember this, but in the early 2000s, there was a book called The Secret, which it's not a good book. It's not a good book. It promoted this pseudoscience and pseudo philosophy, all about this law of attraction, which they attribute to Plato. Plato never talked about any such thing. But it's basically manifesting. If you desire it, if you want to make it real, the universe will give it to you. So this stuff has been around for a long time. It's been around even longer than that. But it's kind of getting a resurgence on social media, especially TikTok. Oh, geez. Yeah, wouldn't it be great if well, what's the saying? If wishes were horses, then beggars would ride. Well, so like I said, a physicalist would deny what Chalmers and Searle say about zombies. Todd Moody has an interesting thought experiment that he calls Zombie Earth, and he's trying to use it to reject consciousness in essentialism. Yeah. Trip to the Bahamas would be nice. Yeah, I know. Wouldn't it be great? I wish there was some kind of because next week we're actually going to talk about conscious versus unconscious action, conscious versus unconscious information processing. And I always thought that if I was some kind of genius mad scientist, I would create some kind of interface with my unconscious mind, some kind of cybernetic implant that would allow me to, write my papers or write a song or do anything creative without having to focus on it. I'd just be like, oh yeah, I could just dedicate some processor space to doing that, right? Unconsciously. Wouldn't that be nice if I could do that and then hook my brain up to a computer and just have my brain do it without me having to think about it? That would be cool. But I think that's a little bit beyond my capabilities. So Zombie Earth from Todd Moody seeks to reject consciousness in essentialism, the idea that consciousness is an inessential extra. So he imagines Zombie Earth. So Zombie Earth is identical to regular Earth, to conscious Earth, we'll say. But it's populated entirely by zombies. They're all identical to us. If you've heard of, Hillary Putnam's twin Earth thought experiment, it's like that. Imagine twin Earth, but instead of water being a different substance or whatever, it's all zombies. Now, Moody has us imagine that the zombies use terms like dream, believe, understand, right? These are all mental states. These are all things that our minds do. We dream, we believe, we desire, we understand, we think, we know. They can use these terms. They can talk about going to sleep and having had a dream just because they can use the words the right way. They're like automatons. But these zombies, according to Moody, don't have experiences of dreaming. They don't really understand these terms because they themselves do not have conscious experience. Yeah, that would be a cool app for everybody. Wish I could manifest. Yes. Oh, that. See, and that's why that's how you know manifesting doesn't work, right? Wouldn't we have already manifested COVID away if we could do it? How many people have said to themselves, geez, I wish there wasn't any COVID. Right? So yeah. Program your brain. Yeah. Oh boy, we're going down a rabbit hole here. Manifested a shoe. You'll have to tell us about that sometime. No, the metaverse. Ooh, no, I don't want to be in the metaverse. Iman, go ahead. You've had your hand up for a sec there. Go ahead.
Oh, my poor hand has been raised for so long. Hang on, my favorite thought when we went down the rabbit hole of manifestation. Dreams, right? Zombie dreams.
Right.
So like if we were to go up to these zombies and describe a dream, do you think they would be like stumped? Like they wouldn't be able to comprehend it, or would they be able to? Because that brings into like a question that they could potentially dream, right? They like know the word, but if we explain a dream, would it just be like bumfuzzled? They'd be like, oh, I don't know then.
Yeah, I think they would not really quite get it, you know. That's if we say these are really zombies and they really are without any inner experience. Because if we say that, oh, well, what if they had the potential to dream or they just started dreaming? Well, that's just physicalism again. That's just saying like, oh, well, you know, because they're physically indistinguishable and behaviorally indistinguishable, then any creature like that just would be conscious. It just would dream, right? So that's physicalism. So if we really allow that these are true zombies, even if we find zombies are not conceivable and we allow like, okay, say they're zombies or robots or whatever, if we really follow the rules of the thought experiment, then they wouldn't really understand terms like dream or believe or whatever. They're just trying to they're using the words, but you'd be able to tell that they don't get it. It's kind of like I imagine it would be like if you were like when you talk to somebody about something that they don't know anything about, but they keep talking to try to like, oh yeah, like, and they keep talking as if they know what you're talking about, but you can tell they're just trying to follow the conversation, right? It's a bit like that. That's how
24/7.
Yeah. Well, hopefully not, but I see those you know, it's kind of like you see those funny internet videos where someone will go and ask people at a music festival what they think of a non-existent band, and people will say, oh yeah, I love their early stuff or whatever, and it's like, but it's a non-existent band and they're just making it up for no reason, just to converse. So okay, something in the chat here, this is interesting. So Katie, my friends and I, we use a Randonautica app. I don't know what that is. Energy. And we didn't see anything, so we left. Gave us another location and we went there. Manifest a shoe. We didn't see this one. We went and looked back and there was a shoe. That is weird. What is that app? What is that app, Katie? Randonautica? What is that? Is that like a geocaching thing or no, I guess it wouldn't be because yeah. I've never heard of that app. Zombies. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. Come on, computer. Here we go. Now, whoops. Now, Moody says that the zombie philosophers who live on zombie Earth would be puzzled by the kinds of things that creatures that actually have consciousness worry about, right? Like we worry, we are conscious creatures, I assume. You're not all zombies. We're not in the Matrix. And we're here in this philosophy class talking about stuff like the problem of other minds or the mind-body problem. We've talked about that a lot. Or qualia, we're talking about that right now. Zombie philosophy wouldn't be like that, Moody says. Zombies might be indistinguishable from conscious creatures like us, sort of, individually speaking. But at the level of culture, you would be able to identify that they are, in fact, zombies, right? So let's see. Oh, it's an app, high energy. Oh my God, a suitcase with a body in it. Jeez. Or am I? Well, that's what I'm saying, right? When you're going through these thought experiments, it's almost like you kind of get tempted into solipsism at certain points because you're doubting stuff. You're kind of like Descartes did, right? You're applying doubt to beliefs, critically thinking about things, to try and work out what you know and what you believe, right? And it can be tempting to make the leap into solipsism there. But Drew, go ahead.
I think that like zombies would probably like be able to exist. And like I think they would also be able to think about these kinds of things if they were like thinking about them more objectively, rather than being confused by them. Because I think that like at a base, a conscious experience is mainly just memory and a sense. So like you've experienced something, you have a memory of it, and then you have a sense that's associated with that memory, and that's kind of like your conscious experience. So if they had the experience of talking with a non-zombie philosopher, and the non-zombie philosopher was able to articulate the argument enough, and they had that brain process, because like we're not talking about a zombie that's like completely empty, like they still are able to like talk and think.
Yeah,
they're just not conscious.
Right.
So
but
like, they would still be able to like understand arguments now.
Well, yeah, like if you wanted to put like one thing that I think you could say about zombies is perhaps that they have what Ned Block calls access consciousness, right? Remember that distinction? There's phenomenal consciousness, which is what it's like, the subjective part. And then there's access consciousness, where information is available in reasoning, planning, speech. Zombies might actually have access consciousness, if you like that definition, but they don't have phenomenal consciousness. So, and this is why we do these thought experiments, because in your description there, I noticed that you said, oh, if they had this experience or that experience, but if they're really zombies, they don't have any experience, right? And that's the problem. Like we can decouple thought and consciousness. They are not the same thing. And zombies, even if they're able to think, if we really allow that they are zombies, well, they wouldn't know. They might know some things, but they would not know the what it's likeness of experience, right? So,
but can I disagree and say that they might be able to, because if they have visual processing, they can see something, and like it wouldn't necessarily, like they wouldn't necessarily have an emotion tied to that thing.
Well, but it's not emotion, right? It's not just emotion. It's anything that you can experience subjectively. If we really allow that they are zombies, then and if we say that they're conceivable, they don't have anything like that. It sounds to me like you might think that zombies are just not conceivable, right? You might be a physicalist, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fine.
Mm-hmm. I'm just struggling with the fact that like if they're able to talk and communicate, what would they be talking and communicating with if they have no memory? And with like,
well, they have memory, they just don't have any subjective experience, right?
So, but what are they remembering? But like if they don't have an experience, like if they have no experience, then how can you remember something which is an experience? Like learning a word is an experience.
my
seeing
computer
something.
my computer has memory.
Yeah.
You know, but there's nothing that it's like to be my computer, right? So
Right.
so really, like, yeah, I don't know. I think you might be a physicalist. Which is fine, like this is what this is meant to do. This is what we're supposed to do. Before I go ahead with all the people with their hand up, I will just say that we might all actually be zombies or have a zombie in our head. In a little bit, we're going to talk about a very interesting phenomenon called blind sight. I don't know if we'll get to it today, but when we do, that will clarify how it's possible to see something and not have a conscious experience about it. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself.
All
so let's do so thanks, Drew, and we'll do I'm on Ben and Jeremy. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I've been thinking about this question for like the entire weekend, and I'm kind of partially stumped now. With how, because if they can talk and speak and say things, I'm even now more confused. I think just the same as Drew, was it? Because I believe that like a soul can only exist so long as a physical body can have, like, as long as it has a physical body to inhabit. So that's like what I believe personality and things come from. So like I don't want to say zombies don't exist because I don't want to admit that I'm a physicalist. But
yeah, I mean that's interesting. That reminds me of the Phaedo, Plato's Phaedo. It's a dialogue where about the death of Socrates, and one of Socrates' friends asks him, well, maybe the soul is like the harmony on a lyre, right? Like my guitar is, oh my god, it's very badly out of tune, but it makes a noise.
I'm not a music person, so I wouldn't know, but okay.
Oh, it
sounds good to me.
Just take my word for it. It's terrible, but so I can play some harmony on the guitar, but if the guitar breaks, the harmony is no more. And the idea there is that, okay, maybe there is a soul, but it needs the body, and when the body dies, the soul ceases to exist. That's interesting. So that reminded me, what you said reminded me of that. So you might want to go.
Are these zombies dead? Because all I can think about is like Left 4 Dead. Like when you're walking around, you see the zombies just kind of slapping each other and just sitting on the floor and just chilling. That's all I can think about.
Yeah, these are very sophisticated zombies. They're really more like, I think of these zombies as like, if you all want to imagine some kind of like Blade Runner-esque androids or replicants, almost like robots or androids that are indistinguishable. They pass the Turing test, if you like. But there's nothing that it's like to be them. So yeah.
I'm stumped.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Remember what Blackmore says in the beginning? Welcome perplexity, right? I told you. Okay, Ben, and then Jeremy, and then I'll get to the questions in the chat.
I didn't have a question in the chat. I was just saying that I was likening these zombies to the clones from Star Wars.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's interesting. But the clones from Star Wars are conscious, right? Aren't they?
How do you know that?
Yeah, they are.
Are they though?
As
I
a
mean,
Star Wars fan.
Well, if they could still talk and if they could still communicate and they're getting orders, like we don't necessarily know if those orders are kind of like plugging in their consciousness or I'm just gonna say I don't know, but that's what came to mind when you were giving your examples.
I mean, I suppose they could maybe not be conscious, but I mean, it's never really mentioned. At least not that I'm aware of. I don't know about any of the extended or expanded universe stuff, but because Boba Fett is also a clone and he seems pretty conscious, right? So I don't know. I'm not sure what's canon here. So Ben, go ahead.
So I just want to ask, like, how is it possible to think without being conscious?
Well, if thinking is just computation, which is what the computational representational theory of mind says, that's the sort of main way of understanding the mind in the cognitive sciences now. If thinking is just computation, then you don't have to have consciousness to think, because what thinking is strictly speaking would just be information processing, right? So what a computer does and what my brain does are the same thing, according to a computationalist. So that's one answer. Yeah, I hope, does that answer your question?
Yeah, kind of. I
Okay.
don't know, like I've always thought that like they're kind of inseparable because, like, I don't know, I when I hear like thinking, I don't think of like necessarily an algorithm, but I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to think about it more. And Jeremy, go ahead.
So I was thinking about this for a while, and for me, I personally think of consciousness and thought as sort of like a physical process. So like the soul comes from a physical process in the brain. So what this boils down to for me is there a physical process that could replace cognition for these zombies and sort of make it so they wouldn't have these experiences?
I don't know. I mean, because some thinkers, like, as we'll see in a moment, Dan Dennett, he's going to argue that we're all zombies. We're just really complicated, sophisticated, self-monitoring zombies. So maybe you could have, if you're a physicalist and you just say, you just deny that zombies are conceivable, and you say, well, no, any creature sophisticated enough would be conscious. Then I suppose to have a true zombie, you'd have to make it less sophisticated, dumb it down, like how, when you talk to your Google Assistant or Alexa or something, you can tell that it's not conscious, just from the way it behaves, right? Maybe you'd have to do something like that with zombies. I better get to the chat. There's questions building up. Yeah, think about it. Oh, was that a cat meow? Oh, sorry, I'm ignoring. Yeah, it could have been. It could have also been my my dog, who is small. And yeah, guys, see if you can make the cat come back. I have two cats and they don't like to hang out with me while I'm lecturing, but the dog is hanging out behind me. And then okay, so some people don't buy Moody's thought experiment because zombies are supposed to be indistinguishable from conscious beings. But Moody's zombies are distinguishable at the level of culture, right? So either Moody's zombies are not really zombies, or he's actually broken the rules. So some think that. These are some things that that Blackmore lists here. I mean, cats are always planning something. Oh, the dog is Tula. Hello. Come here. Come on. No? You're just going to sit there. Oh, okay. Maybe she'll come over and visit, but currently she's sitting behind me on the futon, looking quite comfy. So others think that this whole debate is misguided too, right? Like Patricia Churchland. Oh my goodness, excuse me. Patricia Churchland thinks that this is a, quote, demonstration of the feebleness of thought experiments. So Patricia Churchland is an eliminative materialist and does not like thought experiments. I don't know. I like thought experiments. Dennett, who also likes thought experiments, says that, roughly, I'm paraphrasing here, who cares if you can imagine a philosophical zombie? That doesn't, who cares if that's conceivable to you? That's telling you more about what you think and possibly even your own ignorance about what zombies would be like if they existed than about actual consciousness. So that's Dennett. And we'll talk about more of Dennett here once the slides. Okay, here we go. Once the slides flip over, we got the concept of the Zimbo. So a Zimbo is a term that Dennett introduces to help to clarify the way we think about zombies. So if some of you are still a little confused about what you think here, try to imagine the Zimbo. A zombie, the kinds of zombies we were talking about before, Dennett asks us to imagine that those are a sort of creature that behaves in simple ways. I've got a typo there. In simple ways, just appropriate to its needs. A very simple zombie, like the Left 4 Dead zombies, I guess, only maybe less undead looking, perhaps. I don't know. I don't know if that's what the reference is. What is that? What is
a himbo is just like a simple man. Like it's like a very like complex, or sorry, non-complex, very like null guy who's just like meh going on. That's a himbo. Yeah.
I'm not
but
sure.
Like very innocent and not malice, like in any way. But just like kind of existing.
Maybe. I don't know, because Dennett, as we'll see, the Zimbo is the less simple one. So I don't know. Is that a neologism? Like, is that like a new word, or is that an old word?
Oh yeah, 100%. That is no, it's very new. It's no way rooted in philosophy. I just Googled it to clarify, and it's actually a portmanteau, like a combination of the words him and bimbo.
Oh, okay. Yeah, definitely not that then. Yeah, because Dennett wrote this in like the 80s.
It first dates back to 1988, so
oh really?
We could have some overlap. Yep.
Oh, maybe
this is Googled, so I'm not. This is no scholarly source, but
yeah, maybe. So, but well, just keep maybe not. Just keep in mind that the Zimbo is meant to be the more complex kind of creature, right? So, we have a zombie that we're stipulating now is a simple creature, and it only behaves in simple ways. You know, it can get up, walk around, look for brains, whatever, right? Now we've got a more complicated kind of zombie, and this zombie monitors its own activities, according to Dennett, including even its own internal activities in an indefinite upward spiral of reflexivity. I will call such a reflective entity a Zimbo. A Zimbo is a zombie that, as a result of self-monitoring, has internal but unconscious higher order informational states that are about its other lower order informational states. So if we imagine the simple zombie as just kind of having basic mental states, not consciousness, but basic beliefs and desires, kind of like a simple animal, maybe something like a reptile, right? Then a more complicated zombie would have mental states that can monitor those lower order mental states. Oh, really? Himbo from a Bollywood film made in 1958. Oh, okay. Huh. Wow. I wonder what film. I have to check it out. So we have these Zimbos, which are kind of like self-monitoring, unconscious, but they have higher order mental states monitoring or being about lower order mental states. See if we can get the computer to work here. Drew, go ahead.
I think what I was describing earlier, like in my like understanding of zombies, is more an understanding of a Zimbo, because like the way that it's talking about like higher order and lower order thinking, that definitely like makes a lot more sense. I think Zimbos are definitely more conceivable than zombies in this sense.
Yeah.
Because they have that like ability to mentally process what is kind of going on,
right,
rather than just being.
Right. It wouldn't feel like, I think if you were talking to, yeah, Elijah in the chat, that's a good point too. But to just to get back to Drew's point, yeah, like again, this is meant to clarify our thinking, right? Maybe we're not thinking about zombies the right way. That's, I think, what Dennett's trying to do here. And yeah, like a computer, like Elijah says here, yeah, and that's why I think that whenever zombies come up, I start thinking, you know, I'm using the word zombie, but what I'm actually thinking about is like some kind of android or robot or something, or an automaton. That's what I'm actually thinking about. So imagine if you can. Oh, Donovan, go ahead.
Oh, actually, I was kind of jumping ahead to the end of this page, so I'll wait for you to finish and then I'll.
Okay. So imagine talking to a Zimbo. You can ask it about mental states. You know, you could say, how are you feeling? Did you have any interesting dreams lately? Or tell me about your beliefs, right? You could ask all sorts of questions like this. And because the Zimbo can monitor its internal states, it could answer them. It could even do so in a way that would make it seem as though the Zimbo is conscious. And then it concludes that the Zimbo would unconsciously believe that it was in various mental states, precisely the mental states it is in position to report about. Should we ask it questions, it would think it was conscious even if it wasn't, which, like, ooh, Dan Dennett. So where does this get him? Well, before I get to the hands raised, this means, according to Dennett, we are all zombies. Nobody is conscious, not in the systematically mysterious way that supports such doctrines as epiphenomenalism. Okay, Donovan, and then Ben.
Yeah, that was basically what I was going to say. Like at this point, right? You know, we're you know, talking about consciousness, right? It's like we're separating this concept from like ourselves because, you know, like we're conscious and this thing is not, but we're only saying we're conscious because that's what, you know, seems to be the case based off our internal experience. If this thing technically isn't conscious but believes that it is based on its own internal experience, what is the difference?
Right, exactly. And that's kind of what Dennett's all about, is busting bad intuitions. And maybe we're making a kind of category mistake when we say that, like, consciousness is a thing. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's a process, right? And that's what Dennett's theory of consciousness actually says, is that we're kind of like zombies all the way down, reflexively, you know, all these different mental states about other mental states, and none of them are individually conscious, but in this whole continuous process, we have consciousness. And that's his theory of multiple drafts, which you can read about in his book, Consciousness Explained. Be warned, though, it is a very long, dense book. So, you know, maybe save it for summertime or something. I don't know. All right, Ben, go ahead.
I guess I just don't really understand like what this theory is trying to prove, because like I don't understand what the distinguish, like what is different between a Zimbo and a conscious person to prove that consciousness doesn't exist.
Well,
like
that's the thing. So sorry to interrupt, but that's a key thing that we want to make sure that we don't misunderstand Dennett. He's not saying that he's not saying that consciousness doesn't exist. He's saying that consciousness is kind of illusory. It doesn't work the way we think it does, right? Our experience misleads us about what our experience is actually, you know, how it actually works, right? So that's why Dennett is saying, like, well, there really isn't a difference between a Zimbo and a conscious person. But what Zimbos do is show us that we're not conscious in the way that we think we are, right? That's kind of the, you know what I mean?
yeah, like I get that, but I'm just trying to understand what theory exactly he's like trying to push back against. Like, what is the essential part of consciousness that he doesn't agree with?
He's pushing back against dualism. And he sees the, you know, thinkers like Chalmers and John Searle as dualists, because they're saying, well, you could have a physical system identical to yourself that doesn't have consciousness. So consciousness is extra. Maybe it's a soul. Maybe it's another property. Maybe everything has physical and mental properties, right? But Dennett thinks this is the wrong way to think about it. So that's what he's pushing back against. The sort of temptation toward dualism, because dualism just historically just doesn't work. It doesn't really solve any of the problems that we're trying to solve, right? So anyway, I hope that clarifies things. Just to continue on, well, I'll reread this. We're all zombies. Nobody is conscious, not in the systematically mysterious way that supports such doctrines as epiphenomenalism. So we're like the Zimbo. We can talk about all our mental states. We can talk about our feelings, our experiences. We can go and watch the sunset. We can enjoy a song, drink some coffee. But if we start to think of consciousness as separable, this separate thing, that's when we run into trouble. That's when we make a mistake. And on Dennett's view, there is no difference between phenomenal consciousness and access consciousness, by the way. They're really just, they're not different processes, right? They're not different kinds of consciousness. They're all underwritten by the same processes. So anyway, this is what the zombie debate really comes down to. As I said earlier, if you think that zombies are possible, then you believe that consciousness is inessential. A physical system does not necessarily have to have it. It's an optional extra. And we could do everything. If we weren't conscious, we could do everything that we now do. And there'd be no way to tell that we're not zombies, or that rather that we are zombies. So it's really strange, because if you take this side of the debate, and if you do, that's fine. I'm not judging you or anything. But you have a mystery, right? Why are we conscious at all? If it's conceivable that I could exist physically exactly the way I am now, but not be conscious, well, why on earth am I even conscious in the first place? Right? But if you don't believe zombies are possible, then you think that anything that's made like us, behaves like us, must be conscious. And we've got a different mystery, those of us who believe this. Our mystery is, how and why does consciousness come about? How is it realized in creatures like us, right? How does it all work? And yeah. Huh? Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Like, if zombies are possible, then yeah. Oh, wait, am I misunderstanding what you're saying? Well, I don't know that that follows. Because twins, even though they have the same DNA, I mean, there are actually epigenetic changes that occur in twin populations, such that your DNA, there are things that can happen to your DNA throughout your life, such that twins who have reached the end of their lives, identical twins, will not have exactly the same DNA, actually. Also, and this is important, the twins have different experiences too, right? So, but I might be misunderstanding you. So go ahead.
I just wanted to say, like, if twins, like, whatever, if they are not distinct, what separates them then? I would say it's consciousness, right? Like, what separates their thoughts? Like, why do twins not walk around wearing the exact same clothes and talk at the same time? It's because they are conscious.
Yeah. Like, I see what you're saying. Yeah, like, because they're genetically identical, the thing that separates them are their respective experiences, memories, beliefs, and so on, right? Which is not, I don't think, is determined by DNA, right? Because they have different experiences, they have different points of view on the world, right? Different memories, so they're different. Yeah. So I think I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay, how are we doing for time? I wonder if we can cover all of the hard problem stuff. Maybe we can, actually. So we've got some different tools, some thought experiments that we've done. So now we can swing back around to Chalmers's hard problem. Remember, Chalmers introduces this distinction where we have easy problems, and these are the problems that we can tackle with the tools of the cognitive sciences. So understanding how attention works, or studying different memory faculties, looking at cytoarchitecture in the brain, right? These are all easy problems. We can do these, we can answer questions related to this stuff with the tools we have now. Hard problem is related to subjectivity. It's related to, remember, Nagel's question, what's it like to be a bat, right? We can never know. We can't know. We just can't know that. And it's also related to all of the thought experiments we just covered. You know, in that how people respond to the thought experiments, like Mary, the color scientist, or philosophical zombies. How you think about those, which intuitions and beliefs and concepts those thought experiments get pumping, is related to how you'll deal with the hard problem. Maybe you'll find yourself falling into one of these 4 categories that Blackmore has kind of divided everything up into. 4 different responses, 4 different categories of responses to the hard problem. If I can get my slides to move. Come on. Here we go. So you might think that the hard problem is insoluble. That means that we cannot solve it. William James was one of these thinkers. He thought that maybe we'll never figure this out. We'll never figure out something ahead here. Similarly, we have the New Mysterians. Great name for a band. They think the problem is insoluble, but they all have different reasons why. Like Colin McGinn, for example, says that we're just not cognitively equipped to solve the hard problem. Kind of like how a dog is not cognitively equipped to learn mathematics. We're not equipped to figure out how subjective consciousness works. So, you know, if you give a dog a book on math or physics or philosophy, the dog's not going to learn anything. And maybe we're a bit like the dog, and the book is subjective consciousness. Maybe we're just not smart enough to figure this out. Similarly, Steven Pinker thinks that we might be able to understand how minds work. We can understand the cognition, you know, the cognitive side of things, but that, excuse me, but that understanding consciousness will, quote, be forever beyond our conceptual grasp. Yeah, my dog does not know math. Oh, your dog should study up too. Yeah. But I don't know, man, algebra is hard. So maybe you find yourself in camp number 1. We'll never figure this out. I personally do not think this. I mean, maybe, but I mean, come on. We figured out a lot of things. Humans have figured out a lot of stuff. I don't see why we can't figure this out. Now the next slide, if I can switch it. What do we got here in the chat? Yeah, why? Yeah, it's kind of pointless. Like, what are we doing here when we say, oh, we'll never solve it, we're not smart enough? Well, how do you know? We need to try, right? We have to try to solve it. And that's approach number 2. Like, what are you talking about? We got to solve the hard problem. Chalmers solves it with dual aspect theory. Information has 2 basic aspects. There's physical information and experiential. And this is a kind of dualism. This is property dualism. It's not substance dualism. Chalmers does not think that there are like 2 different substances like res extensa and res cogitans, right? He's not a Cartesian like that. But he does think that of all the stuff that exists, there are 2 aspects. One aspect is physical, matter, energy, and one is experiential, subjective consciousness. Whoa. Similarly, mathematician Chris Clark thinks that mind is actually an aspect of the universe that arises or emerges prior to space and time. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, no, a good discussion. Yeah, like if stuff reminds you of other stuff, yeah. So Chris Clark, well, more in the chat. Chris Clark says that mind is an aspect of the universe, and this is reminiscent of something called panpsychism, which I think also kind of follows from what Chalmers believes too, if you think about it, right? If everything that exists has mental aspects and physical aspects, well, then everything is a little bit mental, a little bit conscious, right? And that's panpsychism. Roger Penrose. Oh, go ahead.
So I was looking up for the reading response. I was looking about dualism because I was trying to defend it. We got into I watched a video about panpsychism. Does panpsychism, to me at least, it sounds like this whole manifestation thing, right? Because everything is conscious and therefore anything can happen if you believe, right? Because everything's connected in some weird way.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Am I right in seeing that, or am I think confused?
No, I think you're right. I think an assumption that people who believe in manifesting or the law of attraction or the power of consciousness, panpsychism is a huge assumption in their thinking. Like if someone says to you, like, you know, I'm going to manifest a thing, they might be a panpsychist. They might believe that everything is a little bit conscious, then the universe is kind of like one big mind, right? So yeah.
Connected to Donald Trump, that means, oh god.
Yeah, that's terrifying, right? Or maybe Donald Trump is proof against panpsychism, because, you know, his texts, I mean, when you read anything he writes, it sounds like an auto text, like, you know, your predictive text on a cell phone.
Yeah.
You write anything on predictive text in a cell phone, and it sounds like how Donald Trump sounds. Basically, yeah. Basically, what I'm saying is, Donald Trump doesn't pass the Turing test. Like, he cannot competently use language to declare his thoughts. So, I don't know. Maybe he doesn't have any thoughts. Wouldn't be surprised there.
Conscious.
Yeah, he's a zombie. Ben, go ahead.
So, like, would panpsychism just be like a version of animism?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's an interesting way to look at it. I think that, I mean, geez, yeah, that's tricky. That's tricky. I think, yeah. I think, yeah. Fundamentally, yeah. I think if you're a panpsychist, that is kind of an animistic outlook. Absolutely. Animism, for people who aren't familiar, is the idea that the world is alive, and usually, like in say a lot of Aboriginal cultures, you see this in religion and folklore, right? There's gods and spirits everywhere, right? Even to this day, you know, in Japan, this is my favorite example, is the Shinto religion. It's the national religion in Japan. There are different religions in Japan, but Buddhism and Shintoism are the two big ones. And people do both. People do both. You know, people will go to the shrine on New Year's and go to the temple to meditate or pray, right? People actually do both. It's not a problem. But Shintoism is a form of animacy where the world is populated by kami, right? Gods or spirits. You also see that children are animists. Children are like natural animists, right? When they play with toys, they have no problem imagining that toys are alive. Yes, this. they have, you know, they can easily imagine that their dolls are alive, their action figures, you know, alive, no problem. Even cars, maybe they're playing with toy cars and trucks, and maybe the trucks are alive. I don't know, but you know, that's animism. And yeah, I think panpsychism is a very animistic outlook. I agree, Ben. Drew, go ahead.
This is slightly irrelevant, but still relevant to like just this point here. But there's a book called God, which goes over how humans and religion have kind of co-evolved. And the earliest like recollection or theory for how humans conceived religion was we have this processing thing in our brain, which like as like hunter-gatherers we developed to see faces in things that weren't there. And so like as like a defense mechanism. So if you would rather see a face and it not be there than see a face and then be dead.
Yeah, it's better to
so
have
like,
a false positive rather than a false negative. Because for the reasons you just gave, exactly. And this seeing faces where they aren't there, this is called pareidolia, you know.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like it's better safe than sorry, right? I use the example, if you're a hunter-gatherer and you hear like a twig snapping in the woods, it could just be the wind, but it could be a predator. So your startle response, that burst of adrenaline, you run away, it's better safe than sorry, because you can't procreate if you're dead, right? So yeah, and that's animism too. So anyway, sorry, continue.
Oh, that was essentially my whole thing. But like but actually this kind of goes back into like our zombie thing, where religion is produced because not because we saw faces in something that was inanimate, but because we ascribed meaning to what was inanimate. So we didn't just see a face in a tree, we saw the spirit of the tree. And so like that kind of contributes to your conscious experience. If there's not something there, like you think that there's a spirit in the tree, whereas it's just your brain processing something naturally so that you don't die.
If anyone wants to kind of get a modern day feel for this kind of thing, I think it's hard to do with trees and rocks. Even with animals nowadays, most of us would acknowledge that animals are not automatons or beast machines like Rene Descartes thought. We would say, most of us would grant that animals are conscious. Like, I think there's something that it's like for Tula to be Tula, but there's nothing that it's like for a rock to be a rock. But if you want to know how our prehistoric hunter-gatherer ancestors may have felt when they saw a face in the tree, I suggest you find and interact with a robot, or watch robots, watch videos of them, really human-like ones. Basically, what I want you to do is I want you to put yourself into the uncanny valley. The reason why I think this is a really cool exercise is because the way I explain the uncanny valley phenomenon, you know, that feeling that robots and CGI characters are kind of weird and creepy. The way that I explain it, at least in terms of physical presence with a robot, is that you have a sort of conflicting set of beliefs and perceptions. You probably think the robot is just a machine. And this happened to me where I was at a conference. I was at a robotics conference, robo-philosophy, actually, really cool conference. I was in Denmark, and all the big famous folks were there. I was so awkward and weird, but I had a great time. And they had a robot, a little tiny sort of like companion robot, just sitting in the corner. And I'm looking at the thing, and I'm like, how does this work? It doesn't look like it's turned on. And I'm looking around, like waving, pushing the buttons on the iPad that it's hooked up to. I'm trying to experience this robot, and I look at it, and then its eyes sort of like jump up and look at me like this, and I was just like, whoa! It was so strange, because here I know this is this machine, but it's looking at me as if there's a mind behind those eyes. And I think that is maybe, that's how I imagine that maybe a hunter-gatherer would have felt seeing perceiving animacy and mentation in nature. So if you can put yourself in the uncanny valley, maybe you might have some appreciation for stuff. Sorry. Yeah. I think it's similar to why people have a fear of clowns. I think it's similar because people have clowns have crazy makeup and weird features, and it looks like a face, but like a really weird, messed up face. And some people fear clowns because they're like, like that. What is that? It does not compute, right? I think there are a lot of explanations, fear of clowns, uncanny valley, feeling creeped out in a haunted house. I think that these experiences are all very similar to one another. And I think that there are various explanations for them. The reason why bad CGI elicits a sense of uncanniness is different from the reason why the robot I interacted with elicits a sense of eeriness, right? So, yeah. Clowns, though. Yeah, clowns. I'm not afraid of clowns, but clowns are really weird. I don't think I'm afraid of them, but I'm like, I don't think I'm comfortable around them either. So, yeah, those Chuck E. Cheese animatronics. Yeah. Oh, what was that movie called? I just watched a really great horror movie that used this trope. Darn it, what was it called? It had Nicolas Cage. Was it? That's a video game, right? But yeah. What was that movie called? I need to Google.
Well, I'm pretty sure if it had Nicolas Cage in it, it wasn't a good movie.
It was like meta good, where it was like so bad it kind of circles around and becomes good. What's that? Willy's Wonderland. Thanks, Sarah. Willy's Wonderland. And the other weird thing is I don't think Nicolas Cage says a single word throughout the entire movie. Pig was also a good Nicolas Cage movie, actually. But anyway, sorry, I liked Willy's Wonderland because they used that creepy animatronic trope. Basically, the animatronics, it's like a Chuck E. Cheese like restaurant, and the animatronic creatures are of course coming to life and trying to kill everyone. And Nicolas Cage has just been hired as the janitor, and he has to fight the animatronic monsters. Check it out if you want to watch something funny, I guess. So basically, other attempts to solve the hard problem, we've got Roger Penrose's approach. He thinks that consciousness depends on non-algorithmic processes. So Penrose he's not a computationalist, right? He doesn't think that minds are computers. And he and Stuart Hameroff, who's an anesthesiologist, they think, similarly to Chris Clark, that experience is actually a quality of space-time related to quantum coherence in the microtubules of nerve cells. Oh, that sounds so complicated. It must be true. Except, this is my gripe with quantum theories of consciousness. I mentioned The Secret previously. Around the same time, there was another film that came out called What the Bleep Do We Know?, which was very much the same sort of stuff. Power of consciousness, and trying to tie it in with quantum physics, which I think they absolutely abused the crap out of that science and misrepresented it quite badly. But my gripe with like a Hameroff and Penrose is that when we try to explain consciousness with something like quantum physics, we're really just swapping one mystery for another, right? Because think about it, we don't understand how consciousness works. There are many different competing theories of consciousness, right? There are probably just as many, if not more, interpretations of the formulae in quantum mechanics. I I think there's something like 17 different interpretations. The formulae are all the same, but what this means, what the interpretations are like, what does it mean, right? And I don't know, it seems to me like we're changing one mystery for another, because we still don't quite understand how quantum stuff works either. Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, like I agree with you. But I just wanted to add, I think like Penrose, his stuff on quantum theory, and then also with like senses, because at the end of his book, like The Emperor's New Mind, he talks about how like the senses, I forget exactly what he says, but basically he ties it into the senses. And although, you know, I don't think it may explain consciousness, I think that like quantum physics is definitely an area of the mind that's like should be studied, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I agree. Like, I'm not saying like I wouldn't want to ever discourage looking into a potentially fruitful avenue of research. And maybe there are some quantum processes going on in the brain, because after all, when we're talking about electrical potential across synapses, like, I mean, we're talking about quantum stuff, right? That's the quantum level. So sure, maybe there's some relevant quantum science when it comes to the brain, just like Newtonian physics is relevant for understanding how we move about and walk around and play sports and you know, type and you know, do anything in the physical world, right? So of course, but I think that the temptation is to just go, oh, it's a quantum process. Okay, but how does that work though? That's the worry, right? So, and this is kind of the important point here at the bottom is, right, on each of these views, we can absolutely solve the hard problem, but we have to fundamentally rethink pretty much everything we know or think we know about the universe, right? This would require a whole new physics. Like, if mind is an aspect of the universe, how we'd have to change everything to make sense of that. It would be like a massive paradigm shift. It would be like discovering the Force exists or something, right? To use a Star Wars kind of comparison. So, oh, go ahead.
How would Chalmers' interpretation of it affect how we think of the universe? Because to me, it just sounds like that there are two aspects in a body, right? At least that's how I'm perceiving it. So I don't know how that drastically changes too much.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Chalmers. See, I'm not actually sure if Chalmers is just a dual aspect theory when it comes to what brains are made of. He might be like John Searle in that regard. Searle is kind of the same. Brains are special. They have special causal powers that other matter doesn't have. What those causal powers are, he does not say, which is why a lot of people accuse him of just being a dualist. I think Chalmers is probably closer to that, where Clark and Penrose and Hameroff are closer to like everything is a little bit conscious, right? And this gets into some really interesting territory, because now we're starting to circle back to like stuff that you know we find in certain religions, for example, which is really interesting. I guess it's time to go. Yeah, it's 12:56. So we're not quite going to finish this today. We just have a couple more slides after this. We'll finish that next time. And then after that, we're going to talk about conscious and unconscious action. And that's going to be really cool, because we're going to come back to zombies. We will be talking about the zombie in our heads, the dual visual pathway. Just a little teaser for next time. What if I told you that you have two visual pathways in your brain? You have one that allows you to see things visually, to have an experience, but you have a second one, and it's the second one, an unconscious visual pathway, that is the pathway that actually guides your action. picking up coffee cups and opening doors and stuff, right? What if I told you that it's that non-conscious visual stream that you actually use when you're navigating the world and doing things and manipulating objects and so forth? Be pretty weird, right? Be like having a zombie in our heads. Well, that's what we're going to talk about next time, and I think it's going to be really fun. So I'll see you all next time, and in the meantime, definitely let me know if you have questions about your upcoming reading response. So yeah, thanks everybody.
Have a good night.
You too. Take care, everyone. Bye for
Thank
now. Thank you. We'll see you all on Friday. End transmission.